Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm really excited to have on my good friend, Kelsey Barrett. Welcome to the show, Kelsey.
Thanks, Mason. Good to see you.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Really good to see you too. And I'm going to start things off with a question I haven't asked yet in the Herbalist Hour, and that's just how's it going? How's life? What you been up to?
Well, it is officially Halloween today.
That's
We're
right.
recording this podcast, which feels very witchy of us.
That's right.
And, in the moment, how's it going? I'm just coming off of a month of doing some deep dives on Ancestry.com, and I've been exploring my ancestry a lot the last year. And I recently discovered that my ancestors were accused at the Salem witch trials. So that's been just something, witchy and fun for today that I discovered this month. So it's a little bit about how is it going. Yeah, and then just coming off of the last 3 months, I'm the clinical director supervisor at Verse, which is an online herbal school. We have a 3-year herbal program that I helped create, and I've been supervising all the clinicians. So I'm really in this moment of complete awe and wonder, actually, about how little herbal medicine is required if you're using precision for the average person, because our students are working with their community and family members in faraway places, just average people. And a little bit of herbalism goes a long way. I can tell you that.
I told this story in the last interview that I did. I feel like I'm the type of person who has like one of those constitutions that needs a lot of herbs to feel the effects. But then I discovered blue vervain, and it's one of those herbs where I take just a couple drops of it and I feel the effects. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Well, first of all, I have to pause and ask you, what kind of effects do you feel with blue vervain?
Oh, dang. Yeah. So I I think I might be bipolar, just first of all, like based on what my therapists have said. And so I kind of run very like energetic and happy and all this, but then I'll have extreme lows and everything as well. And I would just say that a lot of times I feel a great bit of stress. Um, and it's so funny too, because when I'm feeling that great bit of stress, we tend to kind of forget what we actually need to provide ourselves.
Mm,
And when I do remember to take my medicine, I'm like, shit, I need some blue vervain.
mm.
So in those moments of just tension, I'll take just like a dropper full or a couple drops of blue vervain tincture, and it just feels so like grounding. The way I describe it is the way people have described skullcap to me. I've never really had that vibe with skullcap, but when I take the blue vervain, I really just feel calmed down, I would say.
Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah,
Mason, and a little bit more about your process. And
for sure.
I kind of think of blue vervain as skullcap 2.0 or something.
Okay, I like that.
It's one of my favorite herbs for mental health, and so it's interesting that you're coming to the same conclusion. And Matthew Wood says that it's for people with obsessive compulsive disorder, or I just think where the mind gets really tight or in a groove, and you said you kind of go into those highs. I had a client once, and we're just, going straight into talking story, you and me, of course, but
Sure.
I had a client once that had an abortion, and she had developed hypochondria from after the abortion. So there was a trauma, and then she went into obsessive compulsive body tracking and, always thinking that she was catching something. And so I made a very simple formula. I was actually a student at the time, but I was like, this seems like the perfect herb. And within a month of taking blue vervain, she said that she was 70% better. Like her
Wow.
mind, the obsession relaxed. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm definitely like everything that I've read about blue vervain, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, that's me. So I'm definitely like a blue vervain type of person. I've talked about it so much here on the show. So shout out blue vervain. You also, I know we're going to do a round two already. I know we're going to do a round two of the interviews. I would love to talk more about your study of ancestry and whatnot. And I just have to ask, do you think a great starting point for us to say those who feel estranged from our ancestors, should we take like a 23andMe type test?
Hmm. You know, it's so interesting. I think it's kind of like, where do you find your joy in herbalism? There's so many folk herbalists that really love the storytelling. Their soul comes alive, their spirit comes alive. And then some people need that clinical information of like, here's where my genetics say, here's how genes express through me, here's how my people live in my blood. And I think 23andMe is just so much more physiological. So I like it because I think there's so much like just raw material data, but I've also seen people get a little like obsessive about the genetic piece, like what gene expression is going to happen. So I always check in with people, and then Ancestry.com also has a blood work, and I love that, or it's saliva. And I personally love the storytelling of ancestors. It's much better than, you know, watching Harry Potter. If you find out who your own people are and what their lives were like, and it humanizes them and makes them real, and then realize like how many people you just absolutely strived and thrive to get you here today. It's incredibly fascinating. So yeah, I like Ancestry.com personally.
Okay. Oh yeah, Ancestry.com. Okay. So yeah, my brother took 23andMe, found out we're 23. Well, we always joke that we're our closest genetic match to each other. So he's 23% Scottish, 23% Irish. So we'll talk about this later, but I know you have a Scotland trip coming up, which is very exciting. But okay, so let's move on to the standard Herbalist Hour questions here. I'm just kind of curious, what was a young Kelsey like? Were you always into herbs? And then how did you transition into getting into herbalism?
Well, I was actually I'm a banana slug, so I went to school at UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, is that their mascot?
It is.
That's awesome.
It's the most anti-mascot that you
I
can
love that.
have. I'm a banana slug, and you know, I was really into public health and how do we create change around in systematic change. And so I ended up doing a thesis in New York, working with women of color with HIV in New York City with a nonprofit. And I ended up working with the New York City Council on Women's Affairs to fund the first ever study of women with HIV. And I think working with these really underserved communities at a young age, like helped me understand the kind of public health crisis that we're in. But I also didn't feel like I could fully express my creativity in that world. And so at the time I was, you know, also in a rock and roll band of 7 women. So I've always loved hanging out with women and women's health. And that's where, you know, I put my service and energy. And so I was in a rock and roll band. We were touring Europe and having a blast and playing in front of big crowds and expressing myself creatively in the fashion industry, and started working in fashion and textiles. So public health was always there. And then also was this sort of like a rock and roller, kind of, you know, a little bit of a rebel.
Totally.
So herbalism somehow for me like pulled those things together, like public health and creativity. And there's a, you know, a lot of herbalists have that edge of a little revolution in them, like let's bring back alive these old traditions. And I definitely had that.
Who have been some of your herbal mentors along the way?
You know, I really have to give it to Julia Graves, who was, you know, she's a main student of Matthew Wood, and she wrote one of the first books in hundreds of years on the doctrine of signatures. So if you're not familiar with her, she's an incredible practitioner, European practitioner. And she really, when I was young and living in New York City, she really saw me and was like, you are an Irish seer. Like, I see who you are. But you're 25, you look like you're this kind of badass, but you are super sensitive Irish seer. And what's amazing about Julia is that she's a Gestalt therapist. She went through pre-med. She was in silent retreat for years in Dharamsala with the Dalai Lama. she's a homeopathist, like a trained homeopathist and an herbalist. Like her practitioner skills, it's like sitting in front of her, it's like I've never felt so observed in my life.
Oh,
Like just her mind is crystal clear and she can just tap into your soul. And so she said, come to France with me, and you're underqualified, come to France with me and Matthew Wood, and we'll teach you to be an herbalist. I was like, all right, I'm in. So Yulia we're still friends, and she's just been a beautiful ally for me. And now I'm like so grateful I've been in a position to give her teaching platforms in the various places that I've run schools in the herb world at Berkeley Herbal Center and at Verse. Matthew Wood has been a thread, like, man, those books, like his books when we were young, Mason, you and I, when this wasn't super cool, it was like a lot of old hippies hanging out. Like, they were so captivating and magical. And so I have to say, like, he really got me into the magic of herbalism. And Dr. William Morris, he and Matthew wrote a book about tongue diagnosis, but he, he's got like a double doctorate in Chinese medicine and acupuncture and works for the World Health Organization. He wrote the book Medical Astrology. I mean, he's a diagnostic wizard. He's like a Shen Hammer Pulse lineage carrier. So I've studied tongue and pulse with him. And then a lot of my ancestry work, actually, I've gotten really inspired by his work. And we still do sessions, and he's my mentor, I think, forever and ever. So those are some of the big people that have been in my life.
Yeah, you mentioned you kind of put Yulia Graves on, like you'll host her sometimes. It looks like you also host William Morris quite a bit too.
Yeah, I've hosted Will and also Matthew Wood. So I really love,
Awesome.
in this world of where information can be rebranded very quickly. Like something can be online and then you see 3 people talking about it on their Instagram feed or TikTok. Like I really love honoring my teachers and bringing them in and talking about where I got my information from, because I love being in wisdom traditions. Like I love being part of something that's old, that's being passed down, and that's really important to me. So I always bring them in where I can.
That's great. And I'll just give you props. You're a brilliant herbalist, but you're also really great at just design, and I want to say like marketing yourself. So it's great that you're able to help your original mentors like kind of get out there on the internet sphere as well.
Yes. We owe it to them a little bit to do that. Take
That's
some
right.
time, help them with the tech.
That's right. Are folks still able to study with Yulia, and where does she live?
She's in Germany now, where
Okay.
she's from. So she does do online courses, and I know that she's opening up. She is going to be holding retreats in Europe. So if you're interested in European herbalism, like I say, she's TEM, traditional European medicine. So if you're interested in TEM, Yulia is out there like really carrying deep folklore and phytochemical and poetic knowledge of the whole natural world. She's incredibly bright. So I think her website is like yuliagraves.com, but you can find her online.
Yeah, and I'll find it and leave a link in the podcast show notes in the YouTube description and whatnot. But awesome. Well, let's transition a little bit. Pre-call, we were talking about what we could discuss during today's episode, and one of your specialties, as you were mentioning already, is women's health. So there's 3 different categories as we were thinking we could go over. So maybe we could just kind of bullet point each one of those, and then you could kind of give a brief overview as to what you'd like to teach the audience, as well as maybe some practical advice that they could take away. So why don't we start with key body systems to nourish?
Yeah, I'll just say like I have gotten into women's health because I think it's pretty misunderstood, and there's just so much innovation around it right now. And a lot of where I see women's health going is in this state of estrogen dominance. One, because of environmental toxicity, and 2, because women are under a lot of stress. Like, there's not a woman that I talk to that's over, 29 that isn't saying, like, I'm a little bit tired. Like, I feel tired. Why am I so tired? I'm like, this isn't normal for women's bodies to be exhausted or to feel fatigued or to not feel in some level of like balance. So I think what's unfortunate is that like the way that that environmental toxicity and environmental stressors mix with sort of this productivity mode of the West, um, and women's, I think historical need to say like, hey, we can do it too, and we're going to show up and we're going to, change the system. It's beautiful, but we're starting to see I'm starting to see a fallout around that. And it's pushing women into a state of estrogen dominance, which is a very emotional herb. And so I feel like women already get projected on like, oh, they're emotional, or there's an instability, when the culture and the systems itself are pushing women more and more into that state. So, key body systems to nourish is always the digestive tract is huge, and especially the liver. Hormones, the basis of healthy hormones are cholesterol, and that's primarily made in the liver. So what I'm seeing, especially with environmental toxicity, and also there's a really amazing pro-fat movement happening, but a lot of people aren't they don't have the capacity, they have sluggishness or stagnation in their liver. And so they're saying like, I'm going full fat and I'm drinking bone broth and I'm eating cottage cheese. And they're like, why do I feel so ill? Or I'm now having diarrhea, or I feel nauseous. And so there's this like subtlety of, okay, there's more environmental toxins. And so like everyone needs to work on their liver more. And then there's this kind of like more niche issue within the like health traditional foods world, where we're like saying more fat. So the liver has to be sort of detoxed, and the fat especially needs to be cleansed out of the blood and cleaned out of the liver for hormone metabolism, to build healthy cholesterol. And so that's a big piece, right? Like how do we decongest the liver essentially? And then also, in Chinese medicine, the liver can be a storage place for excessive emotional burden. So women, we have our cycles, and we are more we're emotional creatures, or people that are living in like the feminine polarity can be emotional creatures, or people that just have trauma. So looking at how trauma comes in is a huge part. And so that relationship between the nervous system, emotions, and the liver is also really key, which is kind of the next body system I also look at. And so with the nervous system, I see obviously like a lot of fraying. Nervous system diseases are on the rise. So not only are estrogen-based cancers on the rise, so breast cancer, ovarian cancer, also our nervous system diseases are on the rise, like multiple sclerosis and ALS. So I see, everyone's saying like, I'm exhausted. And part of that, I think, is overstimulation. And we're seeing that now become more of a pathological imprint into the nervous system. So understanding like, how do we rebuild, how do we work with hormones, which is obviously the biggest, another big system that I work with, like what's happening in the endocrine system and hormones. But if I've seen like long-term stress, I'm always looking at progesterone. Like, does there need to be some progesterone supplementation? Because that gets gobbled up when people are under stress, and it buffers estrogen. And then I'm also looking at like GABA, like, do we need to rebuild the GABA? And plants like passion flower and St. Johns Wort and skullcap, they're agents that bind to GABA receptors. So they can help us rebuild, and Tulsi, they can help us rebuild some of that GABA in our body. So, the relationship between the digestive system and the nervous system is really huge in hormonal health as more foundational pieces.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. So you mentioned St. Johns Wort, and I want to say a few months back I was talking to you and you were like, maybe say give St. Johns Wort tincture a try. And I've actually been taking the tincture every single day, even just like a little dropper full every single day. And people will say, do you notice the effects of it? And to be quite honest, I'm not sure that I do. Like we were talking about blue vervain earlier. I do feel it immediately or almost immediately. St. Johns Wort, I just kind of like thinking I'm taking it tonically, and over time it's working on me. And I will say this, my disposition has been much brighter, on the up and up over the past few months. So I think there's a multitude of reasons, but I will definitely give some credit to the St. Johns Wort as well. I was hoping with that in mind, maybe you could kind of expound upon your love of St. Johns Wort and why you think it is beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I also take it every single day, so we're in that boat together. But, I think when people talk about it's a nervous system tropho-restorative, which there's very few of those, right, that are actually rebuilding the myelin sheath of the nervous system, which coat and insulate our nerves from feeling sensitive. So for people that have undergone long-term stress, it's kind of like, as far as tonic herbs goes, like milky oats or St. Johns Wort. And I like St. Johns Wort sometimes more because people that I see in my practice, because I work with a lot of chronic illness people, I work specifically in the gut and the nervous system and women's health, their digestive systems are pretty sensitive by the time I see them. And people do have a gluten reaction to milky oats. And the milky oat supply chain, you want to eat it or drink it, but you want to drink it within 1 year of harvesting. So unless you're getting it directly from Oshala Farms or somewhere where you really trust, like I've always wondered about the efficacy of the milky oats on the open market. And so I like St. Johns Wort because it works the liver also, right? It has some effects on the liver. It works with the myelin sheath, and it basically works like as an SSRI, so a selected serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So if there's any kind of history of anxiety mixed with depression, which in the cases I see, especially with hormone imbalance, can exist, I think it's a great herb to have in a toolkit for women's health. Yeah.
Shout out Oshala Farm. They're actually the Herbalist Hour presenting sponsor.
Oh, they are.
They are. So see, Kelsey didn't even know that. She's highly recommending them. So if you're going to go buy some milky oat tops or even oat straw or whatever, please check out oshalafarm.com. Was there anything else you wanted to cover regarding estrogen dominance? Or did you kind of already cover that?
Yeah, I think that, it's important there's a couple of things with estrogen dominance that I want to mention too, which is that estrogen can be pulled out of the body. So if you're having symptoms of estrogen dominance, like I generally with my clients, I have something now called the perimenopause menopause makeover. So although those symptoms, I also work with women in their 20s and 30s, they're already exhibiting symptoms of these imbalances. And if we catch it early, there's so much more we can do. So all of a sudden you're not laying in bed exhausted wondering what happened. Like perimenopause and menopause can be so much worse if you burn your adrenals. So I like to catch women a lot younger. So symptoms of estrogen dominance are kind of like, you can find them all over the internet. But if you have them, there are certain things you can start doing now to pull it out of your body. And one thing that I like to do are insoluble fibers. So mushrooms are an insoluble fiber, bamboo shoots are an insoluble fiber, and Dr. Ray Peat, he's becoming very famous in the pro-metabolic movement, but he has a famous raw carrot salad, which I'm sure a lot of your clients have heard of, or your listeners have heard of. And the raw carrot salad, especially when it's grated vertically, works as a fantastic insoluble fiber to bind to estrogen, and it also helps bowel, people with their bowels, especially if there's constipation. And I've noticed in these cases of estrogen dominance, it's not infrequent that the thyroid's a little low, which means that also metabolic function isn't happening. People trend towards constipation. So daily raw carrot salads, although, it's maybe not the most TCM thing, traditional Chinese medicine, like raw, it is really effective and it's really approachable for people, and it's not too expensive. You can also do a lot more flax, because flax has some there are specific estrogens, and this is, something that isn't kind of widely known, or there's a little controversy around it. Some estrogens actually fill in our estrogen receptor sites and are preventative to estrogen-based cancers. Red clover, white peony, flaxseed. So we can use those preventatively to buffer estrogens that are coming from the outside, and it can even buffer our own estrogen from being absorbed. So if the liver's not working, if we're recirculating estrogens in our body, if we take some of these estrogen filling or estrogen dominant plants, phytoestrogen dominant plants, we can actually buffer some of those estrogens, our estrogens and xenoestrogens from toxicity from being stored in our body. So I like to work with some of those specifically. But not all, it's important to say that not all phytoestrogens are preventative to estrogen-based cancers. Like hops can actually potentiate estrogen-based cancers, for example. So I work with very specific plants to support that process.
Can you tell me more about what you meant by hops and or not xenoestrogens? Or would you define that as a xenoestrogen? Estrogens that come outside of the body?
Yeah, I'd be happy to explain it a little bit more. So alpha receptors, when stimulated, so alpha receptors that are stimulated by estrogens can increase cancer. Beta receptors, when stimulated, can reduce breast cancer. So it just happens to be in the phytochemistry, and I've been digging more into some of this, like the lignans and the isoflavones. But for example, hops binds to the alpha receptor. Red clover binds to the beta receptor. So it's really what receptor sites that they're binding to. And xenoestrogens are estrogens we get from BPA, plastics. They're all coming from the outside. So phytoestrogens they're not exactly structurally an estrogen, but they're close enough to where our body picks it up and says like, okay, that's close enough. I'm gonna use that.
I used to be very worried about, plastics and xenoestrogens. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've become less extreme about it. I just got this water bottle, and it's obviously got like a plastic straw and stuff like that. And I used to like be way more freaked out about that. Are you in your daily life, are you really just trying to eliminate all that stuff as much as possible? Or are you extreme about it? Or I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Yeah, so I have to say, like, I'm a little bit of an extremist when it
Totally.
comes to environmental toxicity, but I've also loosened up, especially as I've worked on my liver and worked on my kidneys and my detox pathways. Like I do monthly green coffee enemas, and I do ionic foot baths, and I have the MTHFR gene. I have one of the two. So I'm always helping my body detox a little bit. And that's a big part also of like 23andMe or genetics. Like, do you have the capacity to detox properly?
Mm.
So certain people do need to be more careful than others, but I'm a big fan of, just more of this traditional philosophy of like strengthening the body. Like, let's strengthen the body, and a strong body is resilient. There is a vital life force that's coming through the body that does create an effect on how we process these environmental toxins through our body. So I've gotten a little bit lax, and a little bit more relaxed as I've gotten older and health stronger. Like I feel my body actually becoming stronger as I get older with the things that I do. And I do work with people that are orthorexic. So I've somehow like caught the deep dive wellness people. And often these people are also very allergic to foods, so they've become hypervigilant because of that. And with those people, everyone's different. So with clients that have that trend towards orthorexia or just obsessive compulsive, I try and soften it a little bit. Like, just get the systems in place and forget about it. Like, get all of your plastics out, replace it with glass, and, in your kitchen, especially with heating and food, I think that's important. But perfection is, I think, can trouble the mind. And, Michael Moore, who's like a big grandfather of a lot of North American herbalists, TCM, a lot of these systems say dysregulation in the nervous system weakens the body, it creates chronic illness. So I'm always looking about this balance of like, how much is the nervous system impacting those a hypervigilant state? And is that more important than them just like saying like, I need to use plastic baggies sometimes for my food? So I work with clients so primarily that I don't like to be so prescriptive. You see what I mean?
Totally. I really like that approach. And just a quick story, back in, I want to say 2010, I started gathering spring water. So pretty much 99.9% of the water I've drank since 2010 has been spring water that I've gathered myself. And it, I used to have only glass. They're called carboys, which you like brew beer in, and then you dump it onto like the porcelain dispenser. And I was looking for a porcelain dispenser that didn't have a plastic spigot, because I was like, well, shit, I don't want my water touching the plastic for like 0.1 seconds. So, but I just had to give up and be like, it's fine. Yeah, it's still.
Oh my God, amazing. I was there too. I was getting like handmade cork top. So those carboys.
Yeah.
And when you're carrying like gallons of water and glass jars, I did the same thing, but I've loosened up. I'm with you.
Totally. And as you said, maybe some of the audience knows about this carrot salad. I actually don't. And I feel like my finger's usually on the pulse. I don't know about this. So I don't happen to know if you have the recipe in front of you, but is it literally just shredded carrots or what's going on here?
I'll give you like an updated herbal version of it.
Please, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So it's raw carrot salad graded vertically. So you have these long ribbons. And I've literally had clients that are like, I'm chronically constipated. I'm like, eat a raw carrot salad every day, and they're pooping. Like, amazing. Like, it's so good. And then usually the classic recipe asks for, raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar, a high quality oil. Of course, these days we're pretty aware of PUFAs. They clog the liver. So I'm using, either olive oil or coconut oil. Coconut oil is antifungal. So if you're trying to like go for that maximum medicinal oomph, you can do some coconut. And then I like to sprinkle basically a gamasio on top that I make for myself that has nettle seed. So I'm getting like tropho restorative nourishment to my kidney, adrenal. And then I do milk thistle in the gamasio, sea salt, and then black sesame seeds, which also have a tropism to the kidney, adrenal. So I make mine like with a super punch for herbalism. Like I maximize.
Are you doing olive oil or are you doing coconut oil, or just kind of mix it up?
I mix it up. I mean, coconut oil does get a little congealed if it's not warm enough outside. So now that it's winter, I'm usually going for olive oil.
Totally. I'm going to have to make that. When you make your gamasio, are you grinding up the milk thistle seeds or are they kind of whole?
I buy milk thistle seed powder, so it's already
gotcha.
ground. So I do the Oshala Farm's nettle seed because it's super high quality.
Totally.
Milk thistle powder. And then I like the like chunkier sea salt flakes because they're just more like delicious when you crunch on them.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Oshala Farm is the only place that I've actually ever seen really sell nettle seeds online.
There's Healing Spirits Farm in upstate New York, and that she's been around forever, like a really long time, and she's kind of this kooky, cool old woman. I've talked to her on the phone before, so I've tried their nettle seed too, and it's good.
I think I've met them before. Is it a husband and a wife? I think I've met them at the International Herb Symposium. Unless I'm thinking of someone else.
Oh, I've only talked to the woman.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'll look them up after the call. So awesome. Well, we covered the key body systems, estrogen dominance. Have we covered everything for the nervous system as well?
Yeah, I think tropho restoratives, herbs that work on GABA, and just I can't say enough about like giving people nervines when they wake up in the morning. Like people that are really caught in chronic fight or flight, just giving them something soothing in the morning is incredibly helpful.
So like coffee or?
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, it's funny. I'm actually not opposed to coffee, but if people are like really stuck, I'm like, okay, let's like take it out for a minute. And they're like, I am calmer,
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot of herbalists are like, no coffee, or I see that a lot in clinical practice. Like I've told them not to drink coffee. I'm like, why? It's probably the only bitter that's like saving America.
There you go.
But I do like, coffee is very moldy. So I do like mold checked and inspected coffees. And I will say that in the pro-metabolic movement, which is more focused on like dietary function, a lot of like modern bodies have this cholesterol, like high cholesterol, cortisol dominance, clogged liver, low under-functioning thyroid, and and blood sugar that's spiking and that's dysregulated. So eating like I know in Ayurveda it's very popular to like do a fast, and I even think for people assigned male at birth or men's bodies, fasting can work actually much better than in women's bodies or people assigned female at birth. And so I go trend towards putting these people that have dysregulation or dysregulation on a consistent diet where they're eating every 2 to 3 hours. They're eating within the first hour of waking up, and they're getting enough carbs because in our community where people, as practitioners or we're seeing clients, a lot of people come with the gut dysfunction because it's just so prevalent. And so making sure that they can digest before you put them on this more like high density diet is important, but getting 25% protein in every meal, making sure there's a carbohydrate, because sugar and carbs are feeding the liver, and the liver is our energy center. It provides 500 functions in the bodies. So it's an energy center for our whole body. So when people are stuck in fight or flight, and I've kind of asked them to implement more consistent feeding and eating, and including carbs, which a lot of people get afraid of when you have digestive disruption. They're like, you're basically telling your body you're safe. You are constantly nourished. There's never a break. And you're like reverse engineering a sense of safety through just being really always having fuel for your kidney adrenals. So your liver never goes into glycogenesis. It never starts breaking down your muscles. You never start pulling and taxing your kidney adrenal. And I've seen it work where people reverse engineer and start to feel safer in their body because they have all the nutrients they need. And even like I've had clients where they're not sleeping through the night and I say, have a snack before you go to sleep. And then they start sleeping through the night because the liver has enough fuel. It has a food source to be fasting all night long. And I think that is probably a result of some of our modern imbalances, like this particular picture. But doing like the kind of, which I think has historically been like a blood sugar stabilizing diet for just people that have like are stuck in a chronic fight or flight is super successful. And it's just all about feeling like well nourished and safe, which is so important for everyone's bodies and especially women's bodies.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like the anti-intermittent fasting.
It's an anti-intermittent fasting diet.
It's right. So funny, like the fads, they come and they go, and it's really right. Just about understanding your own body. And I love that your client ate a snack before bed, and go figure they sleep through the night, which I always say sleep's like the number one pillar of health over diet, exercise, and everything. At least that's my current opinion.
Yeah. I know it's I don't know if it's another fad, but I think it works better for women's bodies.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen.
I was going to ask you this earlier when you were talking about coffee enemas. I just want your opinion on like sauna. Do you have any opinion on sauna?
I love saunas. I mean, I have a home infrared sauna, a sunlightened sauna, and I use it a couple times a week. And I've got all kinds of little protocols I put people on with saunas. I don't know what you want to talk about, but we could talk for a long time about saunas.
Yeah, if any sort of just benefits or reasons to do it. I'm a member of the YMCA, and there's really? A sauna there, and I'm like, shit, I should go use that sometime. I mean, it's part of my membership, so I'm just maybe give me encouragement. Why should I go into the sauna?
So this is like my elevator pitch for saunas, like.
Please.
All right. Well, let's just talk about healthy detoxification in like an environment that's very saturated with toxins. Is that it's all going through our liver or filtering through our kidneys. So that's a lot of pressure on the detox organs, and it's getting more and more, right? So opening up your skin as a detox pathway is super critical in 2023. Yeah. Like it's really important. So for people that have had mold exposure, heavy metal exposure, I work a lot with, I had mold exposure and lived in a house that was moldy. So I, over the course of 7 years, remediated my body when I was kind of like a bit of a medical mystery. So I sort of know these things from like not a theoretical perspective, but just fully experimental. And, they're proven to not only detox, but lower your blood pressure and improve circulation, and just getting toxins out through the skin is so, so incredibly very helpful, especially if it's a far infrared sauna, because the red light wave penetrates more deeply. So you're getting like kind of a deeper cellular push. And if you are a person that has, you have heavy metals, you have toxicity, there's a protocol called a push and catch in more naturopathic worlds. So when we're in the sauna, we're pushing those toxins out from hiding, and you'll want to take a binder with that. So charcoal or chlorella or zeolite or pectosol C, you want to use something that's going to catch it, especially if you have any congestion or stagnation in the liver. So we're pushing things out of hiding, then we're catching them, because saunas, especially infrared, are so good at detoxing you. But if your pathways aren't opening, if you're not pooping, if your liver's not working, then they're just recirculating in your body and creating wreaking havoc, creating more damage. So when we're using saunas therapeutically, you have to gauge what the person's capable of. Like, what is their body capable of in terms of managing a detox? Some people get detox reactions in saunas. And so I kind of prescribe or suggest that people only do a sauna until you break a sweat, and then stay in there a little bit longer. But don't push it. Like, no, I'm going to sweat gallons once a week. You just do a little bit. You don't want to be too aggressive with the body, because our modern bodies do have toxicity. It's the truth.
And that's if you're just starting. Maybe you could up it a little bit more as you progress.
Yeah, you can up it as you progress. And I do like once people are feeling like they're in the rhythm of it, I do really enjoy doing niacin flushes, which is a B vitamin. And it basically flushes the capillaries in the far reaching parts of your body. So you'll feel this like heat flush come. And there's whole protocols where you work from like 200 up to 1,000 milligrams of niacin right before you get in the sauna. So you're basically like all the toxins that are at the the tippy top and the ends of your body get pushed out of hiding, and then you release them. So you can start with baby steps, and then you can work yourself all the way up into like hardcore niacin flushes.
All right. Well, last sauna question. Do you recommend folks do this like once a week, daily, or any sort of routine?
Yeah, if you're just getting started out and you're going on the more gentle route, I would say, and if you've had toxicity, doing it 3 times a week isn't a bad idea, especially if you're not like over sweating. Right. But just getting to the sauna once a week can make a huge difference. Yeah, it can make a massive difference.
All right, well, that's going to be my homework. I'm going to make a raw carrot salad and hit the sauna. We'll talk more about where folks could find you and everything at the end of the show, but I've got a few more questions. This might be a good time to talk to the audience, though, about how people can work with you, because you're an expert in women's health. And yeah, just why don't you point people in the direction of getting consultations with you and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I have clients all over the world, just doing, through Zoom. And then my partner and I, we have a farm and a retreat center, which we call Redwood Dreams. You can link that. And I'm so focused on women just feeling so yummy and loved and well nourished. So I do a half-day retreat here where I feed them adrenal cocktails with fresh orange juice made from the farm. And we do dry brushing, herbal infused body oilination. And then we go into the sauna. We do cold plunge. I give them a flower bath and decoct herbs based on their constitution, and we just have a full day of really deep nourishment, bone broths and teas, and have that embodied experience, which I think a lot of us are missing these days. So I'm always available online. That's so easy. And then here at the farm, we go into that deep embodiment. And then I also teach, I'm in the clinical supervisor at Verse, which is an online 3-year clinical herbalism school, which we talked about a little earlier. So that's more of a menagerie of people that I've pulled together over the last few years. And you can teach from some or learn from some brilliant minds, but my clinical practice and the work I'm doing here at the farm is like where we go deep and we get juicy in the body.
And did I hear you have a clawfoot tubs too?
We totally have clawfoot tubs. That's where the flower bath happens, and it's up to you, but I also do a little sound bath if you want while you're in the herbal clawfoot tub.
Sounds
And the
lovely.
clawfoot tub overlooks our gardens, so we have, seasonal gardens, and it's a beautiful landscape here in Occidental California, West Sonoma County, just a few miles from the ocean.
And we visited you there a few months ago or several months ago, and yeah, beautiful land. And I got to say, I really enjoyed Occidental as well as Forestville, which is right down the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's the home of the California School of Herbal Studies, famous, all the old herbal old timers are here. We see Drake from Traditional Medicinals, he's a friend, and there's just like a lot of herbal history here. In Occidental, it's where Rosemary's Garden is still in downtown Sebastopol, a 20-minute drive. So if you're herbal curious about the like cultural history, this is definitely kind of the one of the birthplaces of herbalism in North America.
Awesome. Well, why don't we head to the For Funsies segment of the show? And I'll just ask you a few questions. Are there any particular plant allies that you've been fond of recently?
Recently,
Yeah, this isn't a favorite herb question. I don't do that on this show. This is just currently what you're vibing with. What you got
I
there?
like that you don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that I've been really experimenting with Japanese knotweed recently in my clinical practice and in my own body because it's such a like next level anti-inflammatory, and I think so many people are dealing with inflammation, and I just see a lot more. I know it's not like as sexy, but I'll say that clinically has been really blowing my mind. How far you can get in a short amount of time with Japanese knotweed and working with inflammation. And then I'll just say like on the land, because there's always stuff happening on the land, and so like what's growing, what am I actually interacting with on a daily basis here is that our apple orchard is going off. So this is the first year that I'm trying to make apple cider. So I'm making some hard cider. You'll have to come back and try my
Yeah.
hard cider.
Hells
So far,
yeah.
it's not involved in the half day embodiment pleasure like that we're offering, but maybe it can be.
Yeah. Oh, I would love to visit and try some of your cider for sure. Um, oh, I saw on your Instagram that you just happened to stumble upon Wim Hof, who's famous for this whole cold therapy, which by the way, just a little story. I grew up in an atheist household, but I was always very spiritual, and I experimented with a lot of different spiritualities. I was very obsessed with Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, but I had a Sikh phase, and they have something called Ishnan therapy, which is taking a cold shower every morning. So I was doing that a lot well before I heard about Wim Hof, but he really has popularized this whole cold therapy. So I'm just kind of curious. Can you tell the story of meeting Wim Hof and what your take is on cold therapy and everything?
Wait, do you still do it?
Yeah,
You,
well, I don't. I used to be way more hardcore. Again, like that's kind of a theme of my life. I get very extreme about things, but then I kind of just hold on to parts of it. But I end every shower with at least 10 seconds of cold water. So it's not the same, but I still do it.
yeah, I was working with there's a institute called Elyn Institute in Big Sur, which is kind of a old, they say it's the birthplace of the human potential movement. But I was working for them, consulting to help them build a product line from the herbs that were in their garden and in the forest. And so I was working there at the time as a consultant, and my friend who was doing all the marketing for Esalen, I have a lot of deep roots in Big Sur. He said, Wim Hof's coming. I was like, how do I get at that breakfast table? Like, let me in.
Yeah.
And he sat down and, you know, he's truly a performer. Like he is so like passionate about what he's doing. And he's like I've seen people like this before where they're like missionaries. Like he has like a missionary energy where he's like, I will make this come alive in the world. You're like, he is on his mission. He's fully in his purpose. And so I was with my friend Nick at the time, and we were kind of talking, and I was like dazzling him a little bit about herbal medicine and like asking him a few provocative questions. Like I actually asked him, like, the breath work seems like just traditional pranayama. Like, is that your own? And he's like, no, this is my breath work. I was like, I don't know. Like I was like testing a little bit the waters, but we were being very playful, and we decided to take a walk, and I walked him through the garden at Esalen, just saying, giving him more of the folklore of the plants, like, here, eat this, try this, like, eat this. And, you know, everyone loves eating flowers. So we were walking down to the canyon at Esalen. There's this canyon where a big river flows, and this river is beautiful, and we call it Gnome Canyon. I don't think that's the official name, but people have said to have seen spirits and gnomes there.
Oh,
So
no.
we were walking down there, and I was like, what do you think about doing a little practice for us? And he was like, I don't know, like, I have to, you know, I also have to prep for my thing that I'm about to do, this talk. And then Nick said, I don't think I really want to go anyways. And then Wim Hof was like, we're going. So like a little resistance, you know, he's like on his mission.
Right.
So it was just it was a very beautiful, intimate moment with like three people. Yeah, two guys that worked at Esalen and myself and Wim. And we were just, you know, smiling and kind of looking in each other's eyes and dipping into this very wild, beautiful river. And, you know, that place on the river is important to me because I've been injured there twice, like severely injured. Like there's a lot of energy in that river for me. So I felt like it was a little bit of a clearing because there's another story, but one time I was almost attacked by a pack of coyotes out there when I was solo camping and hiking and sleeping.
Wow.
So I've like run for my life in that canyon. I've christened myself in that canyon. Like I've done a lot of things have happened to me in that canyon.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I would share a picture of your experience with Wim Hof, but this is a no nudity show. And there's a couple of butts in that picture.
Put a little star on it or something. Just edit the booties.
Yeah, maybe we will do that. Well, I will share this picture for sure. You were mentioning you were a rock and roller earlier, and I was just kind of hoping you could kind of set the scene, maybe tell a story in relation to this picture.
Oh, wow. You went into the Facebook archives.
I did, because I looked for you on Instagram and I didn't see it, but I knew this picture existed. So
Well, you know what's funny is like sometimes life seems like it's like woven together with these little like fine threads of reality. And you know, I'm working in women's health. I love working with women. And back then I was in an all women's band, and our name was Effie Briest, which is like it's a Theodore Fontaine book and a Fassbinder film. And it's about a woman in the Victorian era that becomes sexually liberated. And so we definitely had a vibe, like seven women. We were kind of like gypsy post-punk sort of energy. And I don't know, these pants were from, I was wearing these, I still have these pants. These are a pair of lambskin. Some of your listeners might be averse to this, but I got these pants for free.
yeah.
These are a pair of lambskin pants that I got from Marc Jacobs because I was working as a technical designer at Marc Jacobs at the time. And this was one of our last shows in Brooklyn. It was nearing the end of my time before I like jumped ship and moved to Esalen. And you know, I don't know. All I can say is that like life has never been the same since I didn't have the band. Like it was so much fun. We had a blast. We were just wild. It was like a pure embodiment of the wild feminine. So now I think as a practitioner, try to cultivate that in other women through supporting their bodies. But back then it was just like pure embodiment of the wild feminine, and we were having a blast.
Yeah, it looks like it. So you were one of the singers then, I take
I
it.
was a lead singer,
Lead singer. Wow.
and I played the keyboards, and I had some electronics, and I had a pretty solid tambourine. I also did some fire performance with that in that band.
Oh, wow. Like what? Like swallowing fire or something?
Well, it's a long story, but no, I used to blow fire out of my
Oh,
hand,
wow.
alcohol, and then you add fire, and then you have alcohol in your mouth and like blow it into the crowd. I almost burned down an establishment in Brooklyn once, and then I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. But it was definitely fun, and yeah, the wind was at our back. It was the right time. There was no female bands at that time, and it sparked a movement of all female bands in Brooklyn. I would say also in London, because we had a big following in London. We're traveling there to perform 1 or 2 times a year.
Wow. Yeah, I bet you miss it. I wasn't originally going to ask you this, but you brought up women bands a couple times. I'm just kind of curious for the audience. Do you have any recommendations for your favorite, like say all women bands? Did they look it up on Spotify or something?
Good question.
Put you on the spot.
Um, yeah, my band.
There you go.
They're my favorite all-woman band. Is
Can you
that
find them
wrong?
on Spotify?
You can, yeah.
Oh, that's Effie Briest.
Freebies, Effibriest.
Love
And
that.
it just happens to be that our album was called Rhizomes, which is like
That's rad. Awesome.
plant roots, right?
Very cool. I'm gonna check out Effie Briest after this. Very good. Well, we haven't chatted too much about this. I'd love for you to promote your upcoming trip to Scotland. Tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, I've got a couple of earth-based kind of wisdom events, embodiment events, but we're going to be doing us. Last year we did a summer solstice in Scotland. We'll be doing it again in 2024, and I'm partnering with a. As much as I love this like nerdy clinical stuff, I'm super into just embodied transformation. And as a person with European heritage, I think it's really important to own that and to revive it. So I'm partnering with two friends of mine now, Catherine Stewart, who has this incredible retreat center that basically overlooks the island of Skye. It's on the cliff's edge in a small Scottish town, and the Scottish town is known historically for thousands of years to be a land of peace and reconciliation, where they're rebuilding the entire native forest. And there's an old church site there that is built over one of the oldest pagan sites in Scotland. So it's where the Nordic invaders would come and invade Scotland. So this land is like incredibly special. And there's also a hot tub, so you can like be there, and it's the longest day of the year, so it never gets completely dark. So we're really entering this like liminal space of magic, of European medicine magic. And I'm partnering with Willow Lore, who's a bushcrafter. So she does pretty hardcore taxidermy, wool felting. Like she lives with the land and the people, but she also does traditional European spellcraft. So we're not going to get too deep into spell work this year. That's for future years. But we do a hawthornberry fast on the solstice. We do animal journeys with actual animal parts that Willow has harvested and preserved. And we do trips to Skye. We learn traditional songs. And we have traditional feasts from the land. So it's just absolute, it's like a real immersion into who, as there's a lot of, Europeans in the North American herb scene. And I think it's important that we also anchor into our ancestry to know, like, where do we come from, and not just always pull from other traditions.
Sounds like a magical time.
It's super magic. Yeah.
So, KelseyBarrett.com, and that's 2 R's, 2 T's. And you could go to, I want to say, the events tab, learn more about it there, and probably register there as well.
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. Also, it's at Kelsey Botanica these days on Instagram.
Yes, growing up, just being me.
Okay, so yeah, what happened to Heavy Nettle?
Well, I liked heavy metal and everyone liked it and it was very playful, but
Yeah.
I also felt like it was sort of a younger version of myself,
Yeah.
the heavy metal, which was my old Instagram name and website. So I also think I'm hiding a little bit less these
Yeah.
days. Like I'm happy with showing like who I am. And like I said, I just found out about this like Salem witch trial ancestry. Like I think I've hidden a little bit like my true self in although I know it's very popular in social media to like fully expose yourself, like I don't do that, but I'm getting a little bit better at being like, here I am and I'm claiming this. And I think there's an ancestral piece I've been actually like clearing for a while that's around that. So I'm just being me a little bit more.
That is so cool. And as we were talking about pre-call, we've known each other for about 10 years now. So it has been really amazing to see your evolution, and you've always done great work, but yeah, I love seeing you come out of your shell more. And yeah, you're Kelsey Barrett.
I'm Kelsey Barrett, you're Mason Hutchinson.
That's right. That's right.
Working together for 10 years. So it's just,
Um,
you have such good energy and I always love seeing you and the work that you're creating too.
Ditto. Well, we'll have to do a round two in person, drink some hard cider and whatnot, hang out in your beautiful land. So thanks so much for joining us on the show, Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Mason. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. See you in the next episode, y'all. Bye. Thanks so much for watching today's episode of the Herbalist Hour. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want more great herbal content, be sure to subscribe to our HerbRally YouTube channel. If you enjoy these Herbalist Hour episodes and you'd like to join us live, you can do so by becoming an HerbRally Schoolhouse member. Learn more at herbrally.com/schoolhouse. And if you want to get your first 30 days for free, use coupon code YouTube30 at checkout. So our HerbRally Schoolhouse members get access to exclusive video classes, monographs, and a lot more herbal community discounts, along with joining these live Herbalist Hour interviews. So one more time, herbrally.com/schoolhouse. Enter coupon code YouTube30 at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. All right, we'll see you in the next episode, and take care.